Happy New Year. Welcome to 2021. Thank goodness. 2020 is behind us and 2021 is the year of hope. And as we move forward with our hope for the future and for change and for things to come, I hope that you'll spend some time working on some personal stories, working on some memoir stories. These can certainly be individual stories that are separated from each other, or they could be stories that end up coming together into a single memoir piece, such as a book. Or even just a collection of stories. So there are a few different reasons why people choose to reflect and choose to do memoir type work in their writing. And I want to point out a couple of these because I think that they can be really helpful. Sometimes when writers sit down to start into their writing, sometimes they get the idea of, well, I don't have a good enough story. I don't have an interesting enough life. I don't have anything of value really to say, so I don't think I should write a memoir. I don't think I should write down my personal stories. And I've heard that many times. I've heard that from many people who say, I don't have something that's interesting enough. I have no reason to sit down and to do that writing. But I don't think that having a story that you value as being interesting to others is the only reason that a person should sit down and work on their memoir, work on their personal stories. I think that there are many different reasons to do memoir writing, so I hope that you take some of these into consideration. The first one I want to throw out there is that doing reflective type of writing can help you in organizing your own thoughts. As we age, our thoughts can really become quite scattered because we have so many things going on. We've got kids in the house and the job and all of these different things going on at once. And it can be a little bit of a challenge to kind of get organized and stay organized and keep track of things. But writing in a reflective way can help us in terms of our organization. It really can. It can help us keep track of things, and it can help us make sense of things. It's one of the wonderful things about writing reflectively and writing about our own experiences is that it can help us to make sense of what has occurred, even if you think that those experiences aren't as exciting as what the experiences that another person has had. It can still help you in terms of your organization and your thought process, your ability to process through that information. Another thing, another reason why you may want to consider doing some memoir writing is that it improves your memory. I experienced this very recently. I sat down and wrote up some memories that I had of a particular friend. This was a lady who was my best friend in junior high school. She has since passed. And for the last couple of years, I've been meaning to sit down and write down the memories that I had of her so that I could give that to her adult daughter. And I finally did it. And as I was going through this process of just writing down these memories, just these little things, little tidbits. I mean, they weren't necessarily exciting events, but just little things that I remembered, us going to a concert and us sitting around her room and talking and watching Fergie and Andrew get married. These different events that had happened to us. A lot more memories came popping up. It improved my memory over a very short period of time because even as I was sitting and writing about certain events, other details would come up and thoughts would come up and it kind of tapped into this well of memory that I didn't realize was there. Because at first I was thinking, well, I've got probably 4 or 5 stories that I want to share. And I ended up sharing over a dozen in the end because just more and more information ended up coming to the surface as I was working through the writing. So take into consideration that doing memoir type writing can help to improve your own memory about your own experiences. And that can be a big positive for individuals. Another thing I want you to take into consideration, and this is an idea from Neil Gaiman. I stole this. He talks about any piece of writing that you do, think of it as a gift for a particular person. Sometimes we get wrapped up into this idea that if we're writing, well, we'd better be writing a book and we'd better be writing for this big audience that we're going to make $1 million off of. And that's so infrequently ever the case. Most of the time we write for ourselves and we write for those who are around us. That's what happens for the majority of writers. So if you think about a particular piece of writing that you're doing, such as writing down your memories, writing down your experiences, those can be for just one person in your life. And you don't even necessarily have to identify that person up front. Sometimes as you're doing the writing, that audience will become clear over time. So I would encourage you to think about your writing, not necessarily in terms of writing for this anonymous audience, but instead writing for an individual, one person, maybe your daughter, maybe a cousin, maybe a sibling, maybe a friend, something to that effect. So if you think about your writing in terms of gift giving, I think that it can bring clarity to it and bring purpose to it too. So that's another thing that can help. Another thing that I think is really important in terms of setting a purpose and a reason for doing memoir writing is that it's an exploration of the unknown. When we write about ourselves, when we write about our previous experiences, we don't always know what those stories are until we start to write. And I have seen this happen time and time again, where a person sits down to write and says, you know what, I'm just going to write down the stories of my early years, my experiences of me growing up with my sister or something to that effect, right? And as people start to do that work, more information comes up, more stories come up, ideas and thoughts come together, and some really interesting stories can start to reveal themselves and allow that writer to create something that's unique, something that they didn't think about at the beginning. But really, you have to start writing before you know what that is, before that information is revealed to you. So take that into consideration. And the last thing that I want to present to you as a reason for doing memoir work, doing memoir writing, is to consider writing your book. Consider writing your memoir book. Again, I hear people say, well, I don't have a good enough story. I don't have anything that's really interesting enough. Nobody wants to read about me, that kind of thing. And I don't think that that is necessarily true. I think that many people have a book in them, so to speak, and that you don't always know what that book is until you start to dig into those stories. And then I don't think that you can really take into consideration, well, what is it that I have to share, until you start into that process of collecting the stories, putting words on the page, digging into your memory, seeing what's there. And very frequently, a book will reveal itself, so to speak. And that book isn't always the kind of book that you'll see published at the bookstore and the bookshelves. Sometimes it's a series of recipes that have stories that go with them. Or sometimes it's more of a photography book of taking old photographs and narrating these and talking about what happened in these events or things like this. So these kinds of projects can reveal themselves over time. So what I would encourage you to do, if you haven't yet, is to start 2021 by considering doing some reflective writing, consider memoir writing, and consider writing about your own stories. I know that can feel a little bit of a challenge to get started with. And of course, there's my book, Letters to the Future, which you're welcome to pick up. That's got over 50 different prompts to help you along that process. And I'll create some videos along with it to go with that as well. So consider for 2021 writing up some of your stories and starting down this process. It can be deeply therapeutic for you as a writer. It can reveal some really interesting stories that you may not realize are there. It can help you improve in your own writing skills, and it can create some really interesting gifts that you can then share with others. So hope that there was a little tidbit in there to be of value to you and helpful to you. Happy New Year to you, and good luck with your writing.